DIY, she can do her own show, I think. Y'all have been over there know what I'm talking about, ain't you? But this morning, we're going to be talking about the wise woman builds. And this is a little bit of a different setup, so bear with me, okay? But hopefully we'll get through without any trouble. Before we can build anything, though, we have to have a firm foundation. And Christ has to be that foundation. In Psalm 127, verse 1, unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain who build it. 1 Corinthians 3:11 says that no other foundation can anyone lay than that which is laid, which is Christ Jesus. And I feel like probably everybody here today knows the story of the wise man and the foolish man. That's found in Luke 6 and also in Matthew 7. And Jesus is making the point here that the wise man suffered the same storms and the same problems that the foolish man had, and yet his house stood. And we know that his house stood because it was built on a firm foundation. And so we're going to be talking about that today, about how we as women can help to build firm foundations and build in different areas of our life. Now, in Genesis 1:31, God has made creation. He's made Adam. He's made everything except he makes woman last. And then he said, who knows what he said? It is very good, right? Everything else was good. We are very good. So he had a special purpose for us as women. Let's look at how we as women can build up our homes. We play an important part in building our homes. We're commanded as women to take care of the household. 1 Timothy 5:14 says, I would that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house. Some versions, instead of guide the house, say rule the house. So even if you work outside your home, which is not wrong, it's still your responsibility to see that the things in the house are done the way they should be done. So, you know, you may, if you've got children, that's what I used to tell my kids, what do you think I had you for? You know, go in there and unload the dishwasher. Mama, and I say, well, when you get to be the mama, then you can do that. But anyway, it is up to us to see that the house is taken care of, even if we're not actually doing it ourselves. Jesus gave us the order of authority in the home, which is, of course, Christ is over the man, over the husband's over the wife is over the children. And just because we are in charge of the home doesn't mean that we're over our husband. We just have a different role that we fulfill in the home, but he's still the head of the home. Now, a smart husband is going to allow his wife the freedom to do the decorating and to make decisions, domestic type of decisions, because I don't know about your husband, but my husband sees no need for pillows on the sofa. He doesn't see any need for any more on the bed other than the one he sleeps on. Pictures on the wall, you know, that's just junk and stuff. We know how to decorate. We know how to make it look homey and warm and inviting. So a smart man's going to let his wife have the lead in those kinds of things. Also, in the home, we need to make religion natural. Deuteronomy 6:7-9, the Israelites were told to teach the laws of God diligently to their children. He said, you talk to them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down and when you rise up. Does that sound like a pretty constant thing for them to be doing? You bind them, the laws, on your hand, on your frontlets, between your eyes. You write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. In other words, put them where your kids are going to see them too, when they're going out of the house, when they're coming in the house. Find ways to mention to your children about God just in everyday things. I think it's especially important today that we make sure they understand what the rainbow stands for. That it's not for homosexuality. It's God's promise to man that he's never going to destroy the earth again with a flood. And we need to get them to appreciate that. Also, things like a different race. They may see someone in a store that is not the same color as you are, or has different kinds of features than we do. And they may say, Mama, why is that person different? Explain to them that's the way God made us. God made us all to be different. But we're all important. children and let them see you pray and let them see you study so that they know this is something that's natural. This is something that we do. Have family Bible studies and devotionals on a daily basis. And religion should be natural, but it should be a choice. As long as your child lives under your roof, they have to go by your rules. I don't care how old they are. They're living at your house, they go by your rules. Don't ask your child, do you want to go to Bible study in the morning? Do you want to go to Wednesday? No, there's no do you. It's we are. We are going. And I know of parents who ask their small children, do you want to go to church somewhere else? What? You know, let them pick the congregation they want to go to. Be the parent and guide them, help them know the best choices for them, and you're going to make these. In Genesis 18:19, it says that God chose Abraham. Why? Because he knew that Abraham was going to command his children after him. He was going to tell his children, this is the way we're going to live. This is what we're going to do because this is what God would have us to do. Along with building up our homes and making religion natural, of course, is being effective in our parenting. Now, effective parenting has to be agreed on with your husband. Y'all have to agree what type of discipline and what you're going to do, but it has to be consistent and it has to be effective. If what's being done does not change the behavior of the child into the good behavior, then it's not effective. So it has to be something else. I found this quote here that said, a child who has not known discipline, work, or responsibility will often yield to satanic substitutes for happiness like drugs, sexual experimentation, and rebellion, whether it is intellectual or behavioral. And that's true. I think we're seeing that way too much today. But God says that we need to teach our children to be obedient. Colossians 3:20. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is well-pleasing to the Lord. If you think about that, when we don't teach our children to obey us as parents, we're teaching them to disobey God. Do you see that? Because God said, children, obey your parents. Well, they learn obedience from the parents. If we fail in that area, they also grow up thinking they don't have to obey any authority. And so we need to teach our children obedience. Ben Franklin, I think it was, said, if you will teach your child obedience first, every other lesson will be easier. And that's true. That is so true. Love and discipline are the foundation. We're talking about building. The foundation of good parenting. Think about 2 generations ago. Are children better behaved today or worse behaved today than they were 2 generations ago? Worse. Yeah. I mean, does anybody think they're better? Don't raise your hand. They're not. I mean, how many kids do you see that just absolutely, totally disrespect their parents, disrespect their teachers, disrespect any and everybody because they know there are no consequences, right? So we need to teach obedience. Proverbs 13:24 says, he who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him will discipline him promptly or as needed. We have just come from a lectureship over in Branson, the Show Me State lectures. Probably shouldn't tell you this, it might make you prejudiced, but my brother's a preacher over there, Branson. Tim, so, whether you like Tim or not, he's my brother. And he's a good one, he really is. But one of the speakers there talked about this, and he said, if you're not spanking your child, if you're not employing physical discipline, you hate him. And he said, I didn't say that. God said that. You don't want to hate your child. But God is the one who said, use physical discipline. Don't buy into this, but we don't spank. They've now come out with a new term. Who's heard of gentle parenting? Don't do it. Children will be like, that didn't hurt. I got to go sit in my room for 30 minutes. That's an inconvenience. But it's not physical punishment. It's not what God said to do. I think about the Israelites and many times they disobeyed God out in the wilderness? Did he ever send them to a tent timeout? Did he? What did he do? He said, straighten up or die, right? Pretty much. Wasn't that what he told him? Proverbs 23:13-14 said, do not withhold correction from a child. If you beat him with a rod, he will not die. Beat him with a rod? It doesn't mean child abuse, but it needs to be physical and it needs to hurt. It doesn't hurt, you didn't do anything. You just barely tap, don't do that. Ha ha ha, that didn't hurt. Right? Pat him on that diaper or that padded bottom. He said if you beat him with a rod, you will deliver his soul from hell. Isn't that what we're trying to do with our children? Get them to heaven. Get them to heaven. So let's understand that God, who created you and your child, knows what's best when it comes to discipline. And he said, spank your children. Now, the most effective method that I found with my child was a little switch. It stung, but it didn't break any bones, didn't leave bruises. But it was, just a little switch on the legs, and I had a different child. I kept it in the pew in front of me. Oh, I got criticized. You're not really going, oh, yes, I am. And I would tell him, I'd say, you watch my children here in church. Because my husband's up there preaching. I got 4. I don't have mama and grandma and aunt, cousin, nobody. Just me and 4 kids. And one of them made up for being the only boy. And if he misbehaved, all I had to do was act like I was going to pick up that switch. It became a statue because he knew, I don't want that. If you take them out and let them play in the nursery, guess what they're going to do next time you go to an auditorium? They're going to act up because if I act up, Mom won't let me go play in the nursery. Or run in the hall, or get a drink, or go to the bathroom. You have to make it more unpleasant going out than it is to stay in. And they'll learn that very, very quickly. I just love this. There's those scriptures. I don't know if anybody's taken notes, but you see that little girl? She's not 5 or 6 years old. Now, she looks like she's still probably less than 2. She knows what that spatula's for. She looks like, oh, no, please don't. I think she probably had it before. If you raise your children, you can spoil your grandkids. But if you spoil your children, you may have to raise your grandkids. All right. Also, being an effective parent means that you're there. Be there. Now, these are some old statistics. In 2013, the census showed that children who live in the single-parent homes had doubled in the last 50 years. Well, now it's another, what? Who's got good math? 12 years past that? I'm sure it's a lot higher now, probably the children that are in single-family homes. If at possible, stay at home with your children while they're little, until they at least get into school. Your children are gonna forget all that stuff you bought them because you were working extra and had the money, but they'll always remember the time that you put in with them and the things that you did with them. We need to teach our children manners. This is just basically Matthew 7:12, which is known as what? Y'all can talk, we're not recording. Matthew 7:12, the golden rule, which says, do unto others before they can do to you. Is that not your version? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Teach this to your children at home. Teach them to have good manners. Manners seem to have just flown out the window. I mean, I had a man the other day coming out of a restaurant, and he just kind of cut in front of me, went out the door, let it slam in my face, and go on out, and I'm thinking, your mama didn't raise you right. That's what I wanted to say to him. And then the young men or the men who hold the door for me, I always thank them. Be sure you always thank anybody that does something for you. And even the young ones, I'll say, your mama would be proud of you. That's what I tell them, like a teenage boy that holds the door, your mama would be proud of you. Reinforce good behavior. Teach your child to make eye contact when they're talking to someone, to shake hands, to offer assistance, out of their chair when somebody older comes in the room and needs somewhere to sit. Have you ever seen that where the kids take up all the best seats and you might have a pregnant lady here and an older woman there and an old man and they're leaning on the wall because they ain't nowhere to sit. The kids are in all the chairs. Make them say, please, thank you, yes ma'am, yes sir. Teachers will appreciate that. I've had people tell my children, oh, you don't have to say yes ma'am, and yes they do. Yes they do. They say it at home and they will say it to you. Teach your young men, and maybe your husbands don't know any better either, but they're supposed to take their hat off when they come inside. Did y'all know that? It's considered rude for a man to wear his hat indoors. How many of them sit down at the table and eat with their hat on? It's rude. Look up Emily Dickinson, she'll tell you. That's kind of gone by the wayside, hasn't it? Children need to know not to interrupt a conversation. Just last Sunday, a week ago Sunday, we were having a fellowship meal and a lady was talking to me. I was sitting by her. Her little grandson, about 5, came up. Nana, 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 and we were talking, and she was like, just kind of doing like that. Nana, Nana. Now, I know them very well. I wouldn't do this to just anybody, and I went, Jay, it is not your turn. I said, you wait till we get through talking. Look, he waited about 30 seconds. Nana, Nana. And then she goes, we talked about this, Jay, and of course, he don't pay her any mind. So she kept doing it, and I said, it is not your turn. And when we get through talking, you can talk. So we talked for another minute or so, and then I went, hey, Jake, it's your turn now. You can talk. But we have to teach them. They don't automatically know things like that. And one thing that has always bothered me is adults who let children listen in on adult conversations. When we're trying to talk about something, maybe a situation in the church or a problem with someone, we don't want our children listening. They don't need to know. They need to stay innocent. They don't need to hear what we're discussing. And put your phone away at the dinner table. That goes for all of us. Then, don't be afraid to say no. Children aren't smart enough yet. They don't have the ability to make wise choices. Proverbs 22:15 says that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. Foolishness. They're not able to do this. Every time you say something to your child, it should be followed with, okay. I hear this constantly. It's time to put up your toys, okay. We're going to eat supper, okay. It's time for bath, okay. It's like the child's probably sitting there thinking, you don't know? You know, what's wrong with you? You're the parent. You need to give them the security that at least you're pretending to know what you're doing. Be confident, whether you are or not. Show them confidence. Don't ask them. You know, when they get to be 16 and they get pulled over for running that stop sign, the officer's not going to say, I'm going to write you a ticket, okay? And when they get a job at McDonald's, you be here at 8 in the morning. Is that okay with you? Would you rather come in at 9? No. It will not serve them well if they've been taught all along that what they want is going to be what people are going to get into. You need to say no. And don't feel bad if your kid doesn't like you when you tell him no. If your child likes you all the time, you're not doing it right. They're not supposed to like you. Now, they're supposed to love you and they're supposed to respect you. But they don't have to like you because they don't know any better. That foolishness is in there. We need to say no to things like excessive use of electronics. That's the TV, video games, computer, telephone. These become an addiction to our children. It's an addiction when if you take it away from them, they get greatly upset. You've got a problem. If you've got a child that has to have that whatever entertainment constantly, you've got a problem if they get greatly upset. Children need downtime. They need bored time because you know what comes when you're bored? What? Well, Okay, I was going on a different train.
Creativity.
Imaginations kicks in. They come up with things to do, and yes, for us, sometimes it was trouble. But, you know, that's when they learn to go outside and build a fort out of a stick, you know, or dig a hole, or pretend games and stuff. They have to use their minds rather than it being a constant entertainment type thing. So children need to be bored. Of course, when mine came to me and complained they were bored, I was like, oh, good, I've got something. Oh, no, I'm not, Mom. I always had something to do. But did you know adults can become addicted to electronics too? Right? Did you know that your cell phone, oh, look at this little girl, she wanted an iPad. I just love that look. Aw, how dumb can it be? Your cell phone has replaced your watch, right? How many of you still wear a watch? I do, but it's just my mama. Your camera, we don't carry cameras around anymore, do we? Your calendar, I'm always like, let me check my phone, I'll look, see. And your alarm clock, don't let it replace your family. Don't let that phone be more important than your family. Mike Huckabee in CBS News said that more people check their Facebook page more frequently than they read their Bible. That is sad. But I don't want anybody to say, but think how much time do you spend on your phone compared to how much time you spend with your Bible? Let's let that sink in. Social media effects can lead to increased relationship problems. Ever known anybody that reconnected with an ex, boyfriend that they found on Facebook or on one of these other social media sites? Maybe that even led to cheating on their spouse or becoming divorced. Also, if you're on social media a lot, you tend to think that other people have a better life than you do. You know why? When I take pictures, I do just like everybody else. I swipe off the whole counter in the kitchen and fix me a pretty little towel, set my cake right there to take. Oh, it just looks like my kitchen's perfect. But you don't see all that mess behind me. But you think, oh, Laura, yeah. These people with their perfect little children over here in the corner by the fireplace, but you didn't see what went on for 5 minutes before she got them over there and all the junk that had to be moved. Facebook and social media only shows you what that person wants you to see. They're not going to show you the piles of dirty laundry. They're not going to show you their kids throwing a tantrum in the floor. They're going to show you everything that makes it look like they've got a perfect life. Why can't I have a perfect life? And we get to thinking that way. Maybe your life is as awesome as you pretend it is on Facebook. Just remember, these people are pretending. We all pretend, that's not necessarily wrong. But the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 6:12 that he would not be brought under the power of anything. In other words, he was not going to allow any addiction of any kind to control his life, and we need to be the same way. Then, we also build up our homes by being a godly wife. Now, we know that the wise woman builds her house, but the relationship between a husband and a wife is a psychological relationship. One of you's psycho, and one of you's logical. And it can change day to day. Which one is which? Proverbs 31:11-12 talks about that the heart of her husband safely trusts in her so that he will have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. We never want to give our husbands a reason to distrust us. Sexual immorality. That includes flirting, wearing suggestive clothing, inappropriate touching, things such as that. You don't want to be hiding things that you bought. Now you can order this on Amazon. This doormat. These hide packages from my husband. That's funny. But at the same time, I know people who do that. I know one woman who she puts stuff in the trunk of her car and she'll leave it there for like competitive, isn't it? That can cause him to distrust you, not being where you said you would be. No. And keeping secrets from him. As a godly wife, we want to do our work as unto the Lord, Colossians 3:23. You know, when we're in there washing those dishes, and we're like, oh, I hate to wash dishes. How did those dishes get dirty? You had a family that ate food, right? The piles of laundry. You had clothes to wear. Your house is dirty. You have somewhere to live. We are truly blessed. So if we just flip our mind around instead of begrudging what we're having to do, be thankful. What if you didn't have any kids or a husband or any food to eat? Maybe didn't have a dish to put it on. You know, when we change our perspective, it can change our attitude and help us to be more of a godly life. And no husband should have to beg and plead to the point of getting angry because his wife is lazy, she's not trustworthy, or she refuses to fulfill her responsibilities as a wife and mother. That's just not being the godly wife. You probably already know that more than 50% of couples today get divorced. That's sad. But the rate is even higher if it's a second or third subsequent marriage. Another 10 to 15% will separate, but they don't file the paperwork. And then you've got 7% more who are just chronically unhappy. Now you think about that. That's like 50, 60, over 70% of marriages they're either divorced, separated, or just not happy. That's sad. That's sad to think about. To build a better relationship with your husband, you want to correct each other in private and defend him in public. Keep your personal business off social media. Don't let people, go ahead and pretend you've got a perfect marriage. Don't let people know that y'all had a big blow up that morning. Things like that should not be talked about on social media. Don't treat him like you're his mother. He didn't need another mama. He didn't marry you to be his mama. Don't talk to him like he's one of the children. Look at him when he's talking to you. When somebody's talking to you, if you came up and talked to me and you saw me going, looking everywhere except in your eyes, you'd think, well, she don't care what I'm talking about. She ain't listening. Look at your husband when you can. Look in his eyes. This will make him feel respected and that you're interested. Occasionally give him a gift of something that you know he wants. Not necessarily needs, but wants. Maybe he's been wanting a fishing lure. That would be me, but still. Maybe there's a special fishing lure he wants, and it costs $8 or $10. But just surprise him one day with it. Just something you know that he likes. Give him a smile and a cheerful tone when you see him, when you talk to him. This is something Brooks and I have always done, and come January 2nd, we will have been married 50 years. 50 years, y'all. I know what I'm talking about. We always say, I love you. Talking on the phone, ending in text, going to bed at night. Sometimes it's, I love you too. I mean, you know. But I'm going to say it because what if he dies during the night? What if I die during the night? I don't want our last words to each other to be something hateful or mean that he would remember, that I would have to remember. You don't either. You don't either. So go on and say it. You know you love him. You may not like him right then, but you still love him. You can say that. Regularly relive your beginning. Talk about why you fell in love to begin with. What was it that attracted you? Maybe it was that head full of hair that he no longer has. When you see my husband, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I still love him. His beautiful blue eyes. And I've told him, you can donate any part of your body to science except your eyes. I can't stand the thought that I'd be looking at somebody and thinking, I wonder if those are Brooks's eyes. But talk about how you met, why you love him. What was it about him? And that'll help to keep rekindling that love. Concentrate on the good in your marriage and build on that. right? How often do we end up on the couch, or he's in the recliner and you're over in your chair, and this is the way, you get your pre-sleep, right? Your pre-sleep in before you go to bed. Oh, wait, I don't go to sleep, I have trouble going to sleep. But I'll say, honey, would you rather go sleep in the bed? He's like, what? But do some exciting things sometimes. Go ride a roller coaster. Go whitewater rafting. My mama, Daddy died at 63, and the year after he died, she went whitewater rafting on the Ocoee River and didn't tell us till afterwards. I guess she thought if she died, she didn't want us to know she planned it. And I'm like, Mama, you never mentioned, and I would not in a million years have thought she would even, she said, well, I've always wanted to do that. Well, who am I, just your daughter? I mean, you know, but go rafting, go camping, do something that you've been in your mind, I might like to do that. Go out there and try it. Things like that will keep your marriage more alive and will help you and your husband to connect. And then don't be contentious. Proverbs 21:19 says, it's better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. Proverbs 27:15, a continual dropping in a very rainy day and a continuous woman are alike. Now, I don't know about y'all, but while we were in Branson this week, it rained every single day. Some days more than others, but it rained every day. Now, I didn't really mind it because we were sitting in lectures all day anyway. But can you imagine how that wears on your nerves after a while? Same thing for the contentious woman. And don't nag, quarrel, or nitpick. If you've asked your husband to do something, you really shouldn't keep reminding him every 6 months. I'm glad y'all got that. And dwell with him according to knowledge. 1 Peter 3:7 says, you husbands dwell with him according to knowledge, giving honor to the wife as a weaker vessel, being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. When we don't get along with each other in our marriage, we're hindering our prayers. That's what that's talking about. And that word hinder actually is like a military term that means the road was blown up and impassable. You don't want to blow up your road from you to God because you and your husband are not getting along. And you have to do it according to knowledge. Now, you know, when we get married, we don't know much about him. We think we do. But we find out things we didn't know. One way that you dwell according to knowledge is talk to each other. Tell him what you like, what you don't like, and ask him. Find out about each other. 1 Corinthians 7:2-5 talks about the husband and the wife. Their body does not belong to them, it belongs to each other. And you're not to withhold yourself. Have you ever known a man who had a beautiful wife, what we might call a trophy wife, and he leaves her for somebody who we would consider to be less attractive? Y'all have ever seen that happen? You know why? He either doesn't feel loved, he doesn't feel respected, or he doesn't feel needed at home. Usually. Those can be some of the reasons. So we want to be sure that he feels those things from us. Because your opinion as his wife matters most to him. He cares more about what you think than what anybody else thinks. Your criticisms, on the other hand, hurt him more than anybody else's criticisms. He takes those to heart. And your compliments encourage him more than anybody else. I know when my husband tells me something, you know, he doesn't get to hear me speak, but let's see. He might just tell me, you look beautiful today. Well, 10 people at church can say, oh, you look so good, or I love your dress, your hair. What he says to me is what I remember, because it matters that I'm beautiful to him. You know, people will say, well, marriage is just a piece of paper, but so's money. And how many people spend their whole life chasing the dollar bill? And I've heard people say, we're not getting married because it's just a piece of paper. Oh, no, that's not true. So work hard for your relationship and for your marriage. And then give your spouse your best, not what's left over after you've done for everybody else. Also, we by being a good steward. 1 Corinthians 4:2 says it's required that a steward be found faithful. Now, a steward is someone who's been placed in charge of something by someone over you. God, everything that you have, God gave you. Everything good in your life came from God. It's on loan, we might say. And we're going to give an account to God of how we've used the blessings He's given us. Now, part of this means that when we get into debt, we need to pay it off as soon as possible, because Psalm 37:21 says that the wicked borrows and does not repay. And I'm here to tell you that includes your family. If you borrowed money from a family member and you said, I'll pay you back, you pay them back. You don't just say, oh, it don't matter, it was, Aunt so-and-so or cousin so-and-so or mom and daddy. Of course, understand this principle. Never loan something you can't afford to lose. Okay? If you'll do that, then you won't be as disappointed when you don't get it back. But as Christians, we should honor our word. And when we say, if you'll loan me $50, I'll pay you back on, when I get paid next week. We need to do that. We can stay out of debt by keeping a budget. If we demand more from our husbands than what we have income-wise, that makes him feel inadequate. When we want, and he doesn't have that much income, we need to step back and think about what we're doing to his ego, for one thing. And men's egos, in case you haven't figured this out, are fragile. And we are the ones who make or break it. So don't make your husband feel inadequate because he can't buy you that piece of jewelry or that dress or those pair of shoes or whatever. We want to put God at the top of our budget, not after your expenses and not after your taxes. Luke 6:36 says that we are to give and it shall be given. Conditional. You give, God will give back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, overflowing. Now I know Shayla bakes and she makes delicious food. And I'm sure when the recipe calls for brown sugar, what do you do with it, Shayla?
I pack it.
You pack it. That's right. Press down. Shake it. Press down. God says, I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to take the knife and scrape the top off. God says, I'm going to keep packing it in there till it just flows over the sides. But it's conditional. You have to give first. You'll never outgive God. Ever, ever will you outgive God. God gives liberally and upbraideth not. James 1:5-17. Every perfect gift comes from God. When it says he gives liberally and upbraideth not, that means he doesn't look at you and say, well, you didn't do very good with what I gave you yesterday, so I'm not giving you any more today. He doesn't do us that way. He still continues to give us the things that we need and the good things in life. The point of keeping a budget is to keep you out of overwhelming debt. And this will help you build a financial future where you have more freedom and not less freedom. Sticking to your budget is going to help you get there. And you've got two choices. You either have to live within your income or you got to increase your income. Those are your only two choices of staying in a budget. There's no good way that you can continue to spend more than you make. That includes the credit cards. Pretending to be rich will eventually make you poor. Shopping can be addictive. We've already talked about that, 1 Corinthians 6:12. And credit cards make it so easy. How many college students get that first offer in the mail for the credit card? Oh, yay. I'm old enough to get a credit card. And next thing you know, they've maxed it out. To get another one, max it out. It's addictive. Spending can be addictive, and we have to get a hold on that. Dave Ramsey, y'all know who Dave Ramsey is. He says if you'll live like no one else now, in the present, later you can live like no one else. You know what his favorite expression is? Rice and beans, beans and rice. Y'all heard him say that? Y'all don't know Dave Ramsey? He's the financial guru. He uses the envelope system. You put so much in groceries, so much here, so much there. If you have to eat rice and beans the first 20 years of your marriage in order to get out of debt and to save money, that's what you do, because later on you'll be able to have the steak and potatoes. Not if you start out that way. trying to keep up with others. But who knows, they may be in debt up to their eyeballs. You don't know what they're doing. We need to not be embarrassed to say, I'm sorry, we can't go with y'all today, it's not in our budget. There's nothing shameful about saying, this is not part of our budget, or we can't afford that this week. Peer pressure doesn't stop just because you got out of school, does it? And I tell you, I've always been part of the preacher's family. I don't know anything else. But, you know, a lot of our going out to eat is fellowship things. And there's times when we're like, I don't know, you know, well, you're gonna get peanut butter tomorrow if we go out tonight, that kind of thing. You have to think about that. But I also know a preacher's family who she will flat out tell you up front, we're not going, we can't afford it. And I admire her for that, because she was truly keep you to their budget. Beware of covetousness. Covetousness, the simple definition is just, I want more. Want of more. Luke 12:15, Jesus is speaking. He says, beware of covetousness, for a man's life consists not in the abundance of the things he possesses. So instead of being covetous, we need to get rid of stuff. Our life is broken into thirds. We spend the first third wanting stuff, the second third getting stuff, the last third doing what? Getting rid of stuff. We need to declutter our homes by not buying one thing, don't buy unnecessary things. Titus 2:5 talks about being a keeper at home, and Strong's Concordance says that also means being a good housekeeper. It's hard to be a good housekeeper when it's cluttered. I mean, clutter just absolutely drives me nuts. And I'm not saying I don't have any, don't come to my house. But the thing is, if I'm gonna sew or cook or anything, I have to have it clean around where I'm gonna mess it up while I'm in there. But I can't start a project unless it's clean around me. It just messes with my mind. But I'm gonna tell you something. Of course, Proverbs 14:1 is one that says, the wise woman's gonna build her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. And I hate having a messy house, but sometimes, not enough cleaning, I'll just sit there on the sofa and look at it. I wish that dust would go away. Who in here hates dust besides me? I mean, is that not the most useless thing about housekeeping? You dust and you walk out, you come back and it's back.
You gotta do it again. Yep.
I'm like, where'd you come from? I'll tell you something else. Your kids don't want it. They don't care about your china. They don't care about your hummingbird collection or your little teacups. They don't care that you collected something from every state you ever visited. Guess where it's going when you die? The dumpster or Goodwill, or the yard sale. But yard sales are a lot of work. They're probably not going to do that. They're going to just get rid of it. One day, son, this will all be yours. Oh, please don't do that. I told my husband the other day, I said, if we don't clean out our basement, our kids will hate us when we die. I mean, really, it's just one of those things. The Los Angeles Times reported that the average home, American home, now contains 300,000 items. Now, we're counting probably toothpicks and paper clips and, you know, every little, but 300,000, think about it. That's a lot of stuff. Removing clutter makes room for a life that's focused on things that matter most. Maybe those who are surrounded by clutter don't really know what matters most, so they just keep it all, just in case. Y'all heard of Marie Kondo? Y'all know who that is? She's famous for this decluttering method that she came up with. And she says, you go into a room or start wherever, and you pick up each item. Pick up my cough drop. Does this bring me joy? It does. Won't keep it. It doesn't. It goes in the Goodwill or it goes in the trash, right? That's the way she says it should declutter your home. And I decided, really, I thought, well, I'm going to try this. So I went to the house. And so far, I threw out all my pantyhose. I threw away the utility bills. I got rid of the treadmill. that you own owns your time, it owns your space, and it owns your energy. And it took your money at some point probably if you bought it. We only wear about 20% of our clothes, true? And yet how many of us have closets that are overflowing with clothes? Well, there was one woman who she decided that she was going to get rid of her clothes. She said, I have a bag full of used clothing I'd like to donate. Her husband says, well, why not just throw them in the trash? That's easier. She said, but they're poor, starving people who could really use all these clothes. The husband says, honey, anyone that fits in your clothing is not starving. He's now recovering from the There are benefits that come from being organized and having less stuff. And the number one is less stress. It's less stress when you're more organized and don't have stuff. More efficiency, a sharper mind. I need that one. A knowledge that when you put something somewhere, it's going to be there when you go back and find it. What is it Grandma always said? A place for everything and everything in its place, right? You'll know exactly where it is. Here are some verses that speak about learning to be content with what we have. Philippians 4:11, the Apostle Paul says, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Did you catch the word learned? It didn't come just, it wasn't an inbred something. You learn to be content. We have to learn this. We've already talked about Luke 12:15, to take heed and beware of covetousness, because your life does not consist of just having a bunch of stuff. That's not what's important. 1 Timothy 6:8, having food and raiment, let us every be content. Are you kidding me? Where's my house? Where's my car? Where's my dishwasher? Food and clothes. Food and clothes. Hebrews 13:5, be content with such things as you have. We in the United States are the richest people on earth. Even our poorest people are rich compared to third world nations. Whole nations would look at our homeless and say, I wish I had what they got. When you're crying for a new name brand pair of shoes, somebody dreams about getting your old pair of shoes. Learn to be happy with what you have. And then a fifth area that we can build up our homes is by using effective communication. This is also a learned attribute. Lack of communication is listed as one of the major problems in marriage. So we need to make time to talk. Y'all still sit down and have family meals at night, or at least once a day? Those of you that still have maybe kids or other family at home, this means no distractions during the meal. Guess where that phone is? Not on the table. Not in their hand. I know of a grandmother who puts a basket by her door, and when her grandchildren come in, they have to pick their stuff up. Because she wants them visiting with her. Yeah, we know, don't we? I've seen them sit on the sofa and text each other while they're sitting beside each other. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? Oh, we're just talking. I'm like, you're not talking. You're not talking. Ask open-ended questions of your kids. Take advantage of times that you're riding in the car. Hey, car trips used to be just, well, the noise level was horrible, the fussing was terrible, nobody wanted to be touched. He's touching me. You know, maybe we did on her side. All that business. Guess what now? You don't hear a peep. You know why? They've all got their phones out, and nobody's talking to you. You could be passing the most beautiful scenery in the world, and they'd never see it. So try to get your children, and I have to do this too, because sometimes I like to play word games because it's supposed to make your mind smart. But if I'm doing that when we're in the car, every now and then I think, well, I ought to be looking out the window or talking to my husband, which he really don't care. But, you know, we miss out on a lot when we're glued to our phones. We need to do better about that. What about when you're waiting in line? Waiting in line? You ever wait in line? Walmart? Car line? Pick up your kid at school? Doctor's office? Dentist's office? Lots of places where we're just waiting. How about having a conversation instead of looking at our phones? Have have weekly family game night, or plan activities that require you to do things together and require teamwork. Go camping. Anybody in here like to camp besides me? I love to camp. I love to fish. I mean, there's nothing as calming and peaceful as being out on the water and knowing that this next cast is going to be an 8-pound bass, y'all. Well, stop it. Okay, maybe I'll tell a story. I can always hope. Can always hope. Oh, listen to understand. Listening effectively. Listen to understand. Think about what the person's saying to you rather than thinking about what I'm going to say as soon as I can jump in. When you stop to breathe, I've got something I'm going to say. That I told my husband he better not get done early. Because we ain't done yet. And don't interrupt the other person. This is just a bad habit, isn't it? I tend to do this more, but it's because if I wait for you to finish, I'm going to totally forget what just it's still a bad habit. Allow for pauses. Silence is okay. We don't like silence. A speaker stops talking for very long, we think they forgot what they were going to say, didn't they? It's okay to not have constant talk. And then think before you speak. Give yourself at least 3 seconds to reconsider, what am I fixing to say? How is this person going to take it? Is this going to be helpful or hurtful? Do I even need to be saying it? So think before we speak. Now, I asked some of my family members one time, I said, I wish y'all would think before you speak. They hadn't spoken to me since. But you know, the more we talk, the more our mind wanders. And have you ever caught yourself talking and you're thinking, why am I talking? And you just, what my mama would say, just rattling on. You're just rattling on. And the more we do that, the more we're apt to say something that we're going to regret later on. If I've had too much caffeine, and I haven't this morning, I'll tell you that, but, or on steroids, you know, see, I've got a respiratory, whatever, the doctor gives me steroids, I am high as a kite, Joe. And I tell people, if I say something, just don't pay them in your mind today. Learn to express yourself. State your message clearly, honestly, and constructively when you can. We're almost to our break. They'll just have to deal with it. Avoid negative generalizations when you're talking to the other person. Don't say things like, would you always do that? Or you never do this. Well, that's probably not true, is it? If you're having an argument, stay on topic. What is it you're talking about? Don't bring up things from the past. Well, you remember 5 years ago when you, no, that's not what we're arguing about. We're arguing about something else. So stay with the real problem and don't just get angry. Don't use your anger as an excuse to just vent, you know, and try to tear the other person down. You need to step back and give yourself a few minutes, because positive positive resolutions never come from attacking someone else. You just automatically put them on the defensive, and now they're not listening to what you're saying. Also, learn to keep silent. Sometimes our best communication skill is knowing when not to say anything. Right? There I am. I have the right to remain silent. I just don't have the ability. Think about Job. Think about his wife. Won't you just curse God and die? Well, how helpful was that? Think about his friends that came. You know, you did something wrong. I know you did something wrong. God wouldn't be doing it. You had to tell us what it was. Do you ever want somebody to tell you what they did? I know you did something. Stop.
It's Aaron.
I'll get him. Stop. We're almost through, Aaron.
I know you're my aunt, so I should show some respect, but we do have.
Then,
Pretty sure we just talked about that somewhere.
we started late. Okay, let's get on.
I kept shaking my head no at him, but he did it anyway.
They're that way. Have you ever wished somebody was more fluent in silence? Never trust your tongue when your heart is bitter. Isn't that when we say things that we later regret, when we're hurting, when we're angry, and we just let it come out, and then later we're like, oh, I wish I had said that. Hush until your heart is healed. Okay, number 6, and this is the last one. Before the break, number 6, practicing the golden rule, Matthew 7:12. Don't take your family for granted. You know, many times we treat our families worse than we do strangers, don't we? And yet, who's going to be there for you when you need something? Who is it that shows up? It's your family, right? So make time for each other. Nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd spent less time with my family. But they might say, I wish I'd spent less time at work or on the road or whatever. Let your family know that you're dependable. If you say you'll be there, you say you're going to do something, do it. Show appreciation for the things that are done for you. And this goes along with the next one, using your manners. Say thank you and please with your family. Say things like, honey, would you pass the salt, please? Thank you. If we do that from the very get-go, our children see and hear us, they'll automatically do it too. I had a joke, but we'll skip it. Express your love for those in your family. How many times has a family member died and we were like, I wish I'd have told him how much I loved him. And we have to live with that regret. So be sure they know how much you love them while they're still here. And it's only natural that you're going to have disagreements within a family. I mean, if you don't have, there's something wrong with your family. Because people can't be that close that often and somebody not have a problem. But we need to say, I'm sorry, let go of grudges, and move on. Hopefully these suggestions will help us keep God first in our homes and equip us to build stronger family ties. And when we come back, we will talk about building up stronger friendships. Thank you, ladies.
Is that yours? Is that mine?
Was there enough for everybody?
Yes.
Single row and at the top.
Oh, no, we didn't have to talk. They were a little wild.
I love little pouches and notebooks, knickknacks. Yes.
I don't know, they're on their own.
Maybe not, and then they wouldn't think about it.
Oh, they got Hershey Kisses.
Oh, they got Hershey's
They got
Kisses.
Hershey
We got married to a little Judy here, so we were actually in the very. Yes, it That was mine. Okay, ladies, you know they're gonna do that ugly buzzer if we don't get started. I told my husband, I said, please keep the men in here.
That's pretty. Yes.
I don't know what y'all are getting in those goodie bags, but I'm gonna look at them.
That's a good
I hope it's not a cell phone.
Yes.
Yeah, I have one too. I know her. All right, so we're back to building stronger friendships as wise women. You know, unlike our families, we don't get to choose our family, right? But we do get to choose our friends. So, friendships fill gaps in our lives. Friends give us support, they give us love, they entertain us. I know when we were living in Gadsden before, back in the 80s through the mid-90s, our youngest daughter was born there, number 4. We had a friend who was single, he was divorced and single, a member of the church there. Well, he'd come to our house 2 or 3 times a week. He'd just come in, fix himself a cup of coffee and sit on the sofa. And he told us one time, he said, y'all are cheap entertainment. love and the openness, right? I mean, how long when you get to talking to somebody and you find out you have things in common, before you know it, you're telling them everything about you, or they're telling you everything about themselves. God blesses us with friends who complement us perfectly. They help us. They help us achieve things that we never would have thought of doing alone. But sometimes we receive that friend, and sometimes we are that friend for someone else. The definition of a true friend, I got ahead of myself, but the definition of a true friend is someone who has your back no matter what. They're going to watch out for you, they're going to let you know if there's danger, and they're never going to purposefully lead you into doing something that could harm you. So, or make decisions that aren't good for you. They always have your best interests at heart. And we're going to look at just a few great friendships in the Bible. And the first one that most people think of is Jonathan, David and Jonathan. In 1 Samuel 18, says, as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. This is the essence of true friendship, when you love someone as like you love yourself. And does that not make you think of what Jesus said in Matthew 22, when he said, love your neighbor as yourself? We have to properly love ourselves before we can love other people in the right way. But when we have a friend that we love as much as ourselves, that can be true friendship. You feel like you need a friend? Have you ever heard anybody say, well, I don't have any friends, or I wish I had more friends? Well, guess what? The answer's in the Bible. In Proverbs 18:24, a man that has friends must show himself friendly. And there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. If you want to have friends, you got to be a friend. You have to show yourself to be a friend. Then we've got Elijah and Elisha. We know that Elijah was a well-known prophet. He called down fire from heaven and burned up all the prophets of Baal, and he prayed, and it didn't rain for 3 years. He was carrying out God's work. Well, Elisha, God sends Elisha to be his protege, to help him, and Elijah mentors him. And it says in 2 Kings 2:2 that Elisha attached himself to Elijah. He said, where you go, I go. I'm not going to leave you. So, the point from that is that we need to choose the right kind of friends. Find that friend that's going to help you become a better Christian. We need to choose friends that are not going to weaken us or put us in situations that are going to weaken or mar our example. We don't sometimes realize how easily we're influenced by the people around us. And I read this example here of not necessarily a friend, but if you're on an airplane and you're sitting next to somebody and say they buy a cold drink and a pack of peanuts, you are 30% more likely to buy something yourself than you would have been had you not been sitting by that person that bought something. You know, seeing them buy it, yeah, I believe I'll have one of those too. So, we are influenced. Matthew 5:29-30, Jesus talks about doing extreme measures to cut off things that are bad for us. He talks about plucking out your eye and cutting off your hand, which he doesn't mean literally to do that, but his point is, be aware of the people around you and the influences they have on you. You might need new friends. You might need a new job. You may need to move. You need to get away from these things that may be influencing you negatively. Maybe you need to change your phone number or stay off social media. You need some help, Shayla? Okay. 1 Corinthians 15:33 tells us that evil communications will corrupt good morals. That just means you hang around with bad people, they're going to corrupt your goodness. Don't think that they won't. I hear too many others say, well, I'm with them because I want to influence them. Well, the Bible says, more than likely, if you hang around them too much and too long, they're going to get you. How many times have you known a strong, faithful Christian to marry a non-Christian, and before long, where is that Christian? Are they still strong and faithful, or are they going maybe to a denominational church to keep peace in their family? Too many times the non-Christian influences the Christian to give up on what they know to be right. In 2 Samuel 13:3, is a story, a very sad story, and I'm gonna let you read chapter 3 for yourself to get the whole background of this. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab. He was the son of Shemiah, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very subtle man, it says. Jonadab gave Amnon, his friend, some terrible advice concerning Tamar, his sister. And you need to read that and see. Don't choose friends who are going to ruin your good name. When you hang with the wrong crowd, you know what? You are guilty by association. The cop pulls you over in a car that's got drugs in it. They're not your drugs, but guess who else is going to jail? You, if you're in the car with them. Proverbs 22:1 says, a good name is better to be had than great riches, so protect your good name. And don't hang with people that are not going to help you. We've got Naomi and Ruth. How many of us would ever thought that our mother-in-law could be our best friend? And if you have that relationship, you are truly blessed. You got a good one, Shayla.
Oh, I know.
Just because she's my sister, but still. Ruth told Naomi that she was going to be there for her when she needed her, and she said, where you go, I'm going to go. You know, they'll say this at weddings. And, you know, it's very, oh, that's so sweet, husband and wife. This is a daughter-in-law telling her mother-in-law, whither you go, as I will go, where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, your God will be my God. She's telling this to her mother-in-law. This is the kind of security and strong friendship that lets you know that when you're in trouble, that person's going to be there for you. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times and a brother is born of adversity. And then the greatest friendship was Jesus and mankind. John 15:13, greater love has no man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. Right. Christ is the purest example because he did that. He laid down his life for me and for you and for the whole world, basically. And then he asked, are you his friend? Are we a friend of Jesus? John 15:14 tells you the test. Ye are my friends if you do what I command you. That's how we know whether we're a friend of Jesus. Very quickly, we'll look at some biblical characteristics of friendship. One is you are an authentic person. You share true feelings. Proverbs 11:9 says that a hypocrite will destroy his neighbor. Number two, we show mercy. We're willing to forgive. When we're asked, someone comes to you and says, I'm sorry I did such and such, will you forgive me? Yes, I forgive you. Matthew 18:22, 70 times 7 in a day. Matthew 16:14 and 15 says if we don't forgive, God won't forgive us. We need to be honest. Speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:5. Lie not one to another. In Colossians 3:9, the same thing. Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Now, Matthew Henry's commentary on that, faithful are the wounds of a friend, says that faithful are the reproofs of a friend, though for the present they are as painful as a wound. It is a sign that your friends are faithful indeed if they love our souls and will not suffer sin upon us, nor let us alone in it. Think about what he's saying. And then he makes this application. The doctor or the physician's care is to cure the patient's disease, not to please his palate. Right? When you go to the doctor, you don't want him to tell you things that just make you feel good. You want to know the truth, don't you? How bad is it, doctor? Well, it's not so bad. And then next week you die, you know. He doesn't want to upset you. No, doctors aren't like that, believe me. Most of them missed class when it was bedside manner. Believe me, they did. They're blunt. Well, I'd say you ain't got long. We want to know the truth from the doctor. Do we want to know the truth from our friends? How many friendships have ended because the truth was spoken? You ever lost a friend because you told them the truth? Been there. Paul said in Galatians 4:16, do I become your enemy because I've told you the truth? You know, I've had people say, now, Laura, I want you to tell me the truth. And I'm thinking, no, you really don't. You know, but they'll say that. You be sure that you are, you know, if such and such, be sure and tell me. I want to know. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. You know, I'll lose you as a friend if I really were to say. that. They don't always mean that. Then, we need to be humble. Admit that we have weaknesses. Romans 3:23 tells us everybody sins. We've all sinned. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Nobody was perfect but Jesus. And James 5:16 says we are to confess our faults one to another and pray one for another. We are to be courteous. Respect the differences of opinions. Romans 12:10 says, in honor we prefer one another. So let's say we're going to talk about what color to paint the walls in here. Well, maybe I like blue, because I like Shayla's blue at her house. Maybe you like green. Somebody else likes putrid Tennessee orange. No Tennessee fans in here, are there? But you know what? We recently remodeled our church. Now, when I say recently, just not too many years since COVID. And when they were picking out the floors, something similar to this, and one of the elders, my husband's an elder, but the other elder, they were like, what do you think, Laura? And I said, I don't care. I really did have an opinion, but I was like, I will not. I don't want to be the one that says, and then everybody goes, Laura picked that, and that's not what I want. I said, whatever anybody else wants. Because what does it matter what color the walls are, the floor? Really, is that a big deal? And yet I've known churches that would split because they couldn't decide on how to decorate. And that's so sad. Confidentiality, refuse to gossip. Proverbs 16:28 says that a whisperer separates friends. When someone tells you something in confidence, you need to keep it in confidence. Let's don't be guilty of having that old disease, rumortism. Like, who is it, Barney on Mayberry says, it's not me that can't keep a secret, it's those people I told. Y'all remember that episode about the truck with the gold coming through and the whole town knew about it? Barney had one day. And then, fellowship, make time to be together. It's hard to maintain a friendship, a close friendship, if you never do anything together, right? Have you ever been really close to someone and you moved on, but you just up and down, vowed and declared, we're going to still be friends, I'm going to call you every day, and as time goes by, what happens? Life gets in the way, doesn't it? It makes it harder. In Acts 2, verse 46, the new Christians there were together how often? Yes. Daily. Every day they got together and fellowshiped with one another. It strengthened their relationship. As women, we are important in the church, and we can rise up and build the church. What about Mary, the mother of Jesus? How important was she? Luke 1:28-31, we have the angel Gabriel come in and tell Mary that she's going to be the mother of Jesus. She was a godly virgin. Probably, I don't know how old, I've heard things anywhere from late teens to into her 20s. She was a young woman, but God already saw something in her that let him know, this is the one. This is the one that I want. In Genesis 6:5, when God looked down at the world before the flood, he said, even the thought of man was only evil continually. And I've often thought about, if God were looking today for a godly virgin to bring Christ into the world, would he find one? Before you were married, could you possibly have been that person? Could God have found a godly virgin today? How important it was that he found Mary. Then we have Mary and Martha. They were the sisters of Lazarus and special friends of Jesus. He frequently came to their home in Bethany and stayed with them and ate with them. John 11:2, it was Mary that anointed Jesus with the ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. And in verse 5, it says that Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. I'm kind of hurrying through these because you know what's going to happen. There's Priscilla. She worked with her husband, Aquila, and they were tent makers. But she also helped him to teach Apollos the truth more perfectly in Acts 18:26. And so Paul tells her in says in Romans 16:3, he doesn't say greet Aquila and Priscilla, he says greet Priscilla and Aquila. I don't know that really means anything, but I think 1 Corinthians 16:19, he talks about Aquila and Priscilla having the church meet in their home. So women in the early church, in the early days were important. We've got Phoebe. She supported and cared for missionaries in Romans 16:1. Paul says, I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the church. We've got Dorcas. Who knows what Dorcas did?
She's a dressmaker. Dressmaker.
Dressmaker. She made, all of the widows showed up at her funeral, and every one of them had something she didn't make. Wouldn't that be wonderful when you die, if everybody that came had something in their hand that said, oh, Laura made this for me. Of course, if I made it, anyway. But she was, it says in Acts 9:36 that she was full of good works. Full of good works. She gets mentioned in the Bible because she made stuff for people. And we think, what little thing? No, that's a big thing. Then there's Lydia in Acts 16. You know, she was down by the riverside. And Paul and Silas come and they teach and they convert her, and she constrained them. She insisted that they come home with her and let her show them hospitality. And in verse 40 of that same chapter, when Paul and Silas get out of prison, it says they entered the house of Lydia when they had seen the brethren, and they comforted them and departed. And the church was meeting there in her home also. Would we be willing to do that? Open our home if we didn't have a building and say, hey, we're going to meet at our house. Let's just meet at our house. We've got room, or we'll make room. There's Mary Magdalene, Mark 16:9. She was the first one there. At the grave, it said he appeared first to her. And she was also someone whom he had cast out 7 devils. And then Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and other women, they were the ones who went and told the apostles that Jesus was risen. Euodia and Syntyche. Philippians 4:2-3. Paul calls them his fellow laborers, that they labored alongside him in the gospel. Do you realize there was this many women that did stuff? And Joanna and Susanna. Now you may not be as familiar with them, but they are mentioned in Luke 8:1-3 as being those who ministered unto Paul of their substance. Joanna was the wife of Chusa, Herod's steward, and Susanna and many others ministered unto him. So, look at these ladies. I mean, wouldn't you have loved to have had your name in the Bible for doing something good? And I'm sure there were others, but that was the ones who I made note of. We need to think about the fact that the church is a family. We've talked a lot about the family in the first lesson. And as a family, we want to build up the church, and we do that by speaking to everybody, right? It's easy to sit in our same spot every time and talk to the person right behind us and right in front of us. And by the time we've done that after services, guess where everybody else is? They left. They've gone out the door. So we need to sit, we need to speak to everybody. Go out and stand in the foyer before worship and greet people as they come in. And I know this is totally against human nature, but you could change where you sit.
No.
And once a year, you need to swap sides in the congregation. Don't everybody do it at once, because then you'll still be with the same people.
My daddy used to tell me my name was not written on that seat.
Yeah. Now I would never tell a visitor that's my seat, you have to move, but I have known people who did. Would come in and say that, or somebody else would say, I'm sorry, but that's where Sister so-and-so sits, you're gonna need to move before she gets here, and I'm thinking, oh, that's terrible. Speak to everybody. Get to know those who are different. Now, y'all may not have any different people in your congregation. We have different people. We've always had different people everywhere we went. There's people who may not, they may not look just like us. They may be a different race. They may speak a different language. They may be older. They may be younger. They may not have the same economic status that we do, but we need to get to know them. They're part of your family. If they're a Christian, they're part of your family. We need to show concern and compassion for those who are less fortunate. But how are you going to know if they're less fortunate if you don't talk to them? Right? We're told to bear one another's burdens, but I don't know what your burdens are unless you tell me what your burdens cliques. No one in the church should feel any less important than anybody else. People should not immediately realize that, well, these three families over here do stuff together, but they don't fight anybody else. Shouldn't be that way. Should not be that way. Check on the ones who are absent. If you have children, or had children, when it came time to eat supper, how long would you wait to go find where your child was if they didn't show up at the table? Would you wait 2 or 3 days, a week? Well, I wonder where that one went. Or would you be saying, we're not eating until we find whoever's missing, right? Let's check on the ones who are absent. They weren't there to be fed. Maybe they're sick. Maybe that child's in their room laying down asleep because they don't feel well. Let's go find. Let's find out where they are. There are other areas that we can build up the church. And one of them is by having kids. Because guess what? Only women can do that, right? Childbearing, 1 Timothy 2:15. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. 1 Corinthians 11:12 says, for as woman came from a man, so a man comes through a woman. God chose human childbirth to bring Jesus into the world. That's important. That really places a lot of emphasis on us as women. God thought enough of us as women to let us be, one of us, be the one that brought Jesus into the world. You know, your greatest contribution to the kingdom may not be something you do, it may be somebody you raise. Don't lose your children because you're out trying to save everybody else and you're not paying attention to them. If you've got little children at home, they're your responsibility at that time. That's your place in life at that moment. They're going to grow up and they're going to leave, and you'll have time then to do other things. But be sure that you don't lose your own family. Let me get one of these little strips. I probably sang too much while ago. Compassion. Women show compassion. We tend to have a little better, what would I say, talent for being compassionate for others and being to console those who are in need. You know, men tend to be a little bit awkward in situations where there's someone who's sad or having a hard time. They're not as easy. I mean, I have no trouble going up to somebody and put my arm around them, hugging them, and telling them, you know, what do you need? That men, maybe they don't need to be doing that. Okay. Sometimes the elders may need a woman to help deal with other women. You thought about it? Maybe there's a woman who has a delicate area that needs dealing with, and it's just kind of a little embarrassing for the elders. Maybe it's hygiene. Y'all ever had a stinky member? Someone who maybe just doesn't. Did you know that by the time other people smell you, that you smell yourself, other people have already smelled you for hours? I remember my mama telling me that. Oh, it scared me to death. But some people may not realize, you know, maybe they need a little help. Maybe they don't have the money to buy the items they need for hygiene. Maybe they have a health problem that's a female problem, and they don't want to talk to the elders about their female problem. They could be in the hospital for one of those situations, and they'd prefer that the preacher not show up, you know, but they might like it if another woman came in to visit them. Hospitality helps to build the church. When someone makes you feel comfortable and at home, we would say that person is being hospitable. They're providing a warm, friendly environment. Hospitable means, and I like this quote, making your guests feel at home even though you wish they were. God stresses the importance of hospitality all throughout the Bible. In 1 Timothy 3:2, a bishop or an elder has to be given to hospitality. How important is that wife? She's going to make or break him in that area. I guarantee you she will. We were at one congregation for 9 years, and I never set foot in that elder's house. His wife would never have anybody else. Even when Brooks would go to visit him, he had to stand on the porch. They just didn't let anybody in their home. That's not very hospitable, is it? Think about in the New Testament, how many times Jesus was It's either going to a meal, at a meal, leaving from a meal. They didn't have DoorDash. They didn't have drive-through. They ate in people's homes. People invited them in. They didn't have these restaurants like what we have today. And I think that has kind of decreased our attitude about hospitality as far as that part goes. Romans 12:13 says that the Christians were given to hospitality, not just the elders, but the Christians, all of them. And in 1 Peter 4:9, we are to use hospitality one to another without grudging. That's not like, we're going to have them over. No, we want to have them over. Some practical ways to expand your hospitality is to expand your guest list. Jesus said that when you have a dinner or a banquet, don't just invite your friends and your brothers or your rich relatives and neighbors. Why? They're going to turn around and invite you back. And God says, if you do, you'll be repaid. He said, but when you have a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you. You will be repaid at the resurrection. You're not going to get repaid right now. They can't turn around and say, come to my house next week. God writes it down. You'll be repaid later. Also, we build the church, or we increase our hospitality by serving others rather than trying to impress others. Now, we confuse hospitality with entertaining a lot of times. We feel like we got to entertain. We need to understand that people are not necessarily impressed with our china and fancy fruit food. I've served food that my family likes that other people have been like, what is that? You know, but we like things like curry chicken that has pineapple and tomatoes and onions and, you know, bananas on it and stuff. And we just love it. And so sometimes I fix it for company and they're like, really? That's the whole meal, y'all. Aim for warm rather than wow. See what I'm saying? Your house may not look like Better Homes and Gardens. Mine doesn't either. We live there. These people in the magazine don't live there. These are just model homes, I think, or AI fixed it. We want to draw attention to Christ when we have someone in our home, not to ourselves. Reject the idea that this is my home, it's just for me and my family. When we realize, what did we talk about at the beginning? We own nothing. God owns your house. He's letting you live there. Let's use it to serve other people. If you can't have people over, and I know sometimes you can't, maybe you've got a sick family member or for whatever reason, but we can still be hospitable. We can, if it's a new person comes to your congregation, invite them out on Sunday, go eat somewhere. Let them know that at least you're thinking about them. If they are new, offer to show them around town. If Glencoe's kind of like here, it wouldn't take that long, would it? To show somebody, tell them where to shop, tell them which doctors to go to, where the vet is, you know, all that kind of stuff that a new person might want to know. Look for the person in your congregation that tends to be a loner. You notice, you see who she is, standing off by herself. Invite her to go out with you to eat on Sunday or to spend time with her during the week. And when you have someone over, greet them warmly, engage them sincerely, and say goodbye thoughtfully. Now, Acts 20:36, 21:5-6, and Romans 16:16, those passages are all filled with warm greetings and sincere farewells. So we have biblical example of doing that. So when somebody comes to your home, greet them affectionately. Invite them in, ask them, would you like some tea, some water? Here, sit over here, Mike. You don't have to say the good chair, but you can say, here, have a seat over here. Get up, kids. You know, no, you're not sitting there. Give them the good seat. Let them sit there. Put your phone away while they're visiting in your home. Talk to them. Ask them questions about their life. And don't turn it back around to, oh yeah, if you catch yourself saying I a lot when you've got somebody over, you need to change it to them. Let them talk. Find out about them. And then when they get ready to leave, how does it make you feel if they walk you to the door or even come out to your car with you? It's almost like they hate to see you go, right? And you tell them goodbye and what a good time you had, and we hope you'll come back, just don't stay so late, you know. My daddy used to say, tell my mama, Joy, we're gonna have to go to bed so these folks can go home. Because they would be teasing. But think about, they're gonna remember, if they don't remember anything else about coming to your home, they're gonna remember how you made them feel. That's what they're gonna remember when they leave. We build up the church through teaching. Hebrews 5:12, everybody should be a teacher. When for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again. He didn't say elders, preachers, deacons' wives. You ought to be teachers. You should not still be a babe in Christ needing the first milk of the word if you've been a Christian for 5, 10 years or 20 or 40 years. And yet I hear people say, well, I've only been a Christian 20 years. Really? And you can't teach the plan of salvation? If you worked for me, and you had worked for me for 20 years, and I brought in a new employee, should I be able to say, so-and-so, I need you to teach them how to do this job? I don't know how. I've only been here 20 years. We wouldn't do that, would we? You better learn that job, and you better learn it quick, and you better be able to teach it to somebody else. But how important is it that we learn to teach the gospel to other people? Women specifically are told to teach, the older women are told to teach the younger women, but the younger women have to be willing to listen. And I find this true too many times when I talk about things like child rearing or other things we're going to get to here in a minute. And y'all remember that verse about not being your enemy when I tell you the truth, okay? Write that one down. I can see them rolling their eyes. They don't want to hear. They don't want to hear. You got to listen. Getting into it, aren't we? It says the reason that the older women teach the younger women these areas it talks about is that the word of God be not blasphemed. Blaspheme means that what we do and how we act might cause somebody else to talk badly about the church. That's blasphemy, to speak against. The example that your neighbors see, does that make them want to know more about the church, or does it make them say, I don't want anything to do with that bunch down there? How many times have you heard somebody say, I wouldn't go to that church, they got hypocrites in that church? Well, guess what? You know where you'll be in eternity? Sitting right next to one of them hypocrites. Don't let other people keep you from doing what you know you need to do. And also, I've heard many times the excuse, well, we all teach by example. Yes, we do. But can your example teach somebody the plan of salvation? If you don't open your mouth. Can your example teach God, teach about acceptable worship to God? About divorce and remarriage? We can't just live right and hope that other people pick up on it. We've got to be able to open our mouths and talk. And we can combine that with hospitality. The best place to have a Bible study is at your kitchen table. Do you know that? Where people feel comfortable. I don't know if y'all know Robin Nicole Whitaker that do Back to the Bible, House, Heart, House Evangelism, the Home Evangelism, Church Evangelism program. They have excellent materials for how to incorporate hospitality and evangelism. We also build up the church by being a godly example. Our actions and our priorities. Matthew 6:33, you probably know this one. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Now, if I were to tell my 7-year-old granddaughter, you get to be first in line, where's she going to be? The very front of the line, right? She's not going to have 2 or 3 other people in front of her and still say, I'm first. No, we can't have 2 or 3 other things in front of us in our lives and still say that we're putting the church first. Romans 14:13 says, don't be a stumbling block or occasion to fall in brother's way. Do not let your good be evil spoken of. You know, wrong is wrong, no matter how many people say it's right. Even if our government says it's legal to have that abortion or to buy that lottery ticket or to drink that alcohol, God says no, it's wrong. And the ends don't justify the means. Oh, but the money goes to help this and help that. Yeah, but also what about all the homes that are wrecked because of the gambling addiction or the alcohol addiction or the lies, the murders that have happened because of the abortion? Somebody's always watching you. I told my ladies class not too long ago, I said, every one of you are an older lady. Of course, they looked at me, and I said, because there's somebody younger than you, and they're looking at you. Those 8, 9, 10-year-olds, who are they looking at? The teenagers. I want to be just like her. I want to dress like her and fix my hair like her. You get the 20s and 30s, they're looking on up. Somebody's watching you. You may not know who it is, but they're watching you. We need to be careful of our speech. Now, I hope you can see that. If you see any words up there on that picture that you use, please stop. Every one of these words are a euphemism, which is a word that is taking God's name in vain, using the name of Jesus in vain, or taking a biblical word and using it in a non-biblical manner, which is profanity. We cannot talk like the world and be acceptable to God. Our speech, Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupt communication, these are corrupt communications, proceed out of your mouth, but that which is used of edifying or building up to administer grace to the hearing. When we use euphemisms and slang and profane words, we are profaning the name of God. You know what happened in the Old Testament if they misused God's name? They took them out and stoned them to death. That's how important God considers his name. He says, my name is reverend. He's only reverend. So when you take OMG and you use that or abbreviate it, you are using God's name in vain. Now, he's not going to strike you dead today, but he will hold you accountable in the day of judgment. Also, these other words that kind of sound like Jesus or anything that's, there's no holy cow, girls. Let's don't be saying holy anything unless you're talking about something in the Bible. These are bad habits. Sometimes we just need to break a bad habit. We covered this one time in ladies' class, and I told them, I said, if you have a bad habit of using these words, put you a good strong rubber band on your wrist, and every time you start to say it, pop yourself real hard. And I said, after a while, you're not going to want to use it. And this one woman goes, boy, my wrist is going to be hurting. But she was being honest. It is a bad habit. We hear it. You can't turn on the TV without hearing OMG, can you? Constantly. I even have to mute The Price is Right, because some of those people get up there and that's all they can say over and over and over, and I'll just mute them because I'm like, I'm not listening to that. What we listen to will stay in your brain. Also, we need to be careful that we don't use harsh, hurtful words. You know, our words hurt. We need to be careful of the things that we say. Proverbs 12:18 says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrust, but the tongue of the wise, we're talking about the wise woman, brings healing. Proverbs 21:23 says, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. I need to write that one and put it on my mirror in the bathroom. Keep our mouth. Keep ourselves out of trouble. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Did you know that when you talk, every time you talk, people see in your heart? They know what kind of person you are because of the words that come out of your mouth. And then, we want to maintain purity. 1 Peter 4:4. The world's going to think you're strange. Just accept it and move on. It says, they think we're strange because we don't do the same things they do. You tell these guys, no, we cannot live together. No, I'm not your wifey. I will not put anything in my name for you if we're not married. Boyfriends do not get husband privileges. Being a wife or pretending to be a wife to your boyfriend doesn't guarantee he's going to marry you. In fact, my grandma used to say, why buy the cow if you can get the milk free? Think about it. God says, get married first. So, you tell these guys, you're not going to lift the veil over my body until you lift the veil over my face. And if you love me, put a ring on it. Y'all know that song? Put a ring on it. My daughters always go, Mama, please stop. Put a ring on it. Do it the way God said to do it. Maintain your purity. If the guy really loves you, he's not going to ask you to sin with him. Do you hear me? He's not going to ask you to marriage is honorable and the bed undefiled, but adulterers and whoremongers, God's going to judge. Hang with me. We also set the example by the way we dress. We don't look like the world. We shouldn't. We shouldn't. We need to dress modestly. 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10. In like manner also the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with braided hair, gold, pearls, costly array, but which becometh women, professing godliness with good works. Now, godliness means a mind toward God. When I got dressed this morning, I look in the mirror and I say, what does God think about what I put on today? I don't think people own full-length mirrors anymore. I really, you go to Walmart and you're just amazed. But if we're godly thinking, we're thinking, what does God think? Turn sideways and turn around. The worldly mind says, ooh, I look good in this. This is what my friends wear. This is what my best friend got. I want to dress like her. Right? That's a worldly mind. God said to dress modestly. Now I hear it. Well, what is modest? God commanded it. If it's commanded, it's a salvation issue, ladies. Understand me. You can lose your soul if you don't understand modest. Did God say, you better dress modestly, and I hope you figure it out? Did he do us that way? No. God said, you better dress modestly, and you go back to Genesis 3:21, and I'll tell you what modest is. Adam and Eve had sinned. They put on these big old fig leaves, which covered more than most people wear today, and yet they were still considered naked, right? So God made them clothes. Now, if God made their clothes for them, it would stand to reason that this is his minimum standard for what he considered to be modest. If you covered this much of your body like he covered Adam and Eve, then he considers you to be modest. Anything less, not modest. And you can cover more, but you can't cover less. So in Genesis 3:21, the word for tunic there is written in Hebrew. I don't know Hebrew. Anybody here know Hebrew? But I looked it up. The word is chthoneth, the Hebrew word. Describes a shirt that hangs on the shoulders and reaches to the knees. Women and men wore these, although there might be a little difference in the style and pattern. God dressed Adam and Eve in the same type of garment. He did not put Wilma Flintstone outfit on Eve. One shoulder and chewed off it right here that looked like the dog head. He didn't put a loincloth on Adam, looked like a diaper, and send them out of the garden. Their leaves they had on would have covered more than that. God put a tunic, chthoneth, on both of them that went from their shoulders to their knees. If it goes from your shoulders to your knees, it's going to cover your thigh, your entire thigh. Now, never thought I'd have to do this. Some people don't know where their thigh is. Honestly, I had a woman in her 50s say, well, I thought it was this little knob part up here. And I'm like, help my time. So I decided I need to include this slide. If anybody doesn't know what a thigh is. Now, if you'll look, on the left side of the screen is a chicken leg. And on the right side is a human leg. You see the red bone? They're both thighs. Medically speaking, they're femurs. See that one in the middle? That's a KFC thigh. My favorite piece of chicken. If I go to KFC after a while, I won't because I know we're going to have good chicken today. And I ordered a thigh, and I pay them that $6. It's way too much. And I go sit down to eat it, and I get a piece about that big. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back up there to the counter, and I'm going to say, I paid for a thigh. I want the whole thigh. And when I get through eating it, there better be a knob on each end. Right? That's the whole thigh. God covered the whole thigh. He didn't come halfway down. He didn't, I don't know if I do it from here. He didn't come like right here. He came all the way to here because there's where your kneecap is. Came all the way down. Now, chicken, same way. You get a chicken thigh, you want all the way down, right? We understand where our thigh Old Testament, anytime it speaks of someone's thigh being uncovered, God calls it nakedness. He said their nakedness was exposed. God expects us to cover our thighs completely, standing, sitting. He expects us to cover our cleavage. See, I can only talk to y'all because we're all girls. Men can't, my husband can't get up and I told him, I said, you can preach my lesson, but you can't show my pictures, sometimes. But he didn't send Eve out of the garden with half of her breast showing. And Adam, our men need to keep their shirts on and they need to wear their pants to their knees, just like we need to do. If we want to be sure that we are modestly covered. The way we dress each day is a decision that we show the world whether we care more about what God thinks about us than what the world thinks about us. Proverbs 11:22 says, as a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. Without discretion would be immodestly dressed. So let's don't be dressing like a pig in a dress, okay? Jeremiah 6:15, God's people, it says, were they ashamed when they committed abomination? No, they were not at all ashamed. Neither could they blush. Have we lost the ability to blush today? Do we see people blush? You know, it used to be if my husband said, why are your bra straps showing? Oh, I was. Your slip showing. Now people don't even know what a slip is. We used to be embarrassed if our underwear was showing. This is Walmart. Y'all think this woman came naked? No, look at her ankles. She thinks she's got on clothes. Is she modestly covered? Color doesn't equal cover. She looks just, if you couldn't see her ankles, you'd think she just totally forgot the bottom part of her outfit. But you'll see this. Do you not see this? I saw a woman yesterday going in the store. Her shorts were so short, her bottom cheeks were hanging out. Her husband's walking right along behind her, and I'm thinking, what is wrong with you? Do you really want other men looking at your wife? What is wrong with husbands and daddies that let their wives and daughters leave the house dressed like that? If y'all can't tell, my daughter said, Mama, why you always talk about putting on clothes? I said, when I see people getting their clothes on, I'll move on to something else. But I said, it's a problem in the church. We're dealing with it. Every congregation I've ever been to, they're dealing with it. Ephesians 5:1-8 talks about that we need to examine ourselves and walk as children of light. I know of a congregation that said they actually were handing out hand towels to the women as they came in so they could put it across their legs during worship. Because the men passing the communion said we cannot keep our minds on our business because of the women's legs and breast. So they needed nursing home bibs too. Do you realize what you're doing to the men when you show up with your legs exposed, your thighs exposed, and your breast, the cleavage exposed? They have it hard enough, girls, just walking out around in the world. Let's don't be part of their problem. Let's help them to be able to be what they're trying to be. You know, when we stand before God in judgment, don't hope you dress modestly. Don't hope. Hope is not a good plan. That's what our meteorologist says all the time when there's a tornado. You better have a plan. You better get your water and your flashlight and your batteries and your helmet and your pets, and when you get everything else in, you can go get your kids, you know, and get in your safe place. But he said, don't hope that tornado's gonna miss your house. That's not a good plan. Don't stand before God and say, I hope I dress the way you wanted me to. You know, you can know. Know that you dress modestly. Now we're gonna do something fun. I'm going to put up a picture, and I want you to say whether the outfit that you see would be godliness or worldliness, okay? Some of them might be obvious. I didn't hear anybody.
Worldliness.
Oh, there you go. Remember, shoulders to knees, 6 feet more. Can you see her underwear?
Yeah.
See her bra?
Sarah bra.
I mean, she could put something else on under there, or I don't know, but anyway, we don't want our underwear showing, ladies. Worldly, it's too short, and it's too tight. You see how short it is now? Guess where it's going when she sits down? Woo-hoo. But I'm going swimming. It's a one piece. Find in the Bible where God's definition of modesty changes with the activity. It ain't there. But I'll look different, won't I? What's wrong with that, Payton said? That was okay, is it?
I like it.
It is. And I'll tell you something, we actually are living in a good time because people are more aware of sun and protecting their skin, so you can wear something that covers you up more. Nobody thinks nothing about it. They think you're just trying to not get a sunburn. Y'all, they're gonna buzz us, come on.
Worldliness.
Worldliness, too short, too low, and too sheer. She thought she looked good.
Godliness.
Godliness. Mamas, start young. If you start young, teaching your daughters what's modest, you're not gonna have trouble when they get to be a teenager. Not as much as you might have. If they already understand that we're doing this to please God. How about that? You know, in my time, we would have been embarrassed to go out with rips in our jeans. Can you see any part of her thigh? And guess where it goes? It's not hard, girls. Come on.
Godliness.
Godliness. There's nothing wrong with that outfit. When I get skinny, I'm not buying it. Worldliness, too short and too low. Oh, but I'm getting married. Is that a godly dress? Just because you're getting married doesn't mean you should show everybody at your wedding what you got. Okay? God didn't say if you're getting married or going swimming that you get to take your clothes off. No. That becomes to her knees.
Well, it's ugly.
Yes, it is.
It is ugly.
It is. Well, I don't know, you can see her bra through
Yeah.
through
There's
the top.
problem. We can see her underwear. Right. And how many people wear stuff like that today? They do.
Godliness. Worldliness.
Kind of
Worldly, why?
tightness.
Too tight. If your clothes are so tight that there's nothing left of the imagination and you look like you laid on the bed and held your breath, you know, to get them put. If you had to do that and put them on, they're too tight.
Godliness. Worldliness.
Leggings, yoga pants. Repeat after me. Color is not cover. Say it.
Color is not
Color
shown.
is not, just because you put color, you look like somebody spray painted those on you, you're not modestly covered. Because when you turn around, look at her rear, you can see every bit of her bottom, right? Sometimes you can even see the moles and the cellulite. You're not modestly covered just because you put on some stretch tights over it. All right, y'all did good. 100, give yourself 100. All right, our example in worship also builds up the church. We're to worship in spirit and truth, John 4:23. God is seeking true worshipers, those who will worship in spirit and truth. Spirit is your attitude. I mean, you can go through all the motions out here and be doing it exactly the way God said to do it, but if your mind is not participating, or you've got a bad attitude, you're back there thinking, I wish that preacher would shut up, you know, or I left the oven on, I got to get home. Things like that that distract us. That's not worshiping in spirit. Playing with your cell phone in church is like forsaking the assembly without leaving the building. I know I'm on the phone, but y'all, that's a problem. We have that problem at home. But I really think that if Brooks would 15 minutes, every time he saw somebody playing with their phone, they'd stop. That's a penalty. And I'm gonna go as far to say, take your phones away from your kids, even your teenagers. They're gonna tell you, but Mama, I use my Bible. Then bring a Bible. Because they do not have the self-control to not check their text when they get a text. And it's gonna pop up while they're looking, they'll have their Bible, and then here's this sweet little girl pops up, sends them a text. They're gonna look, I guarantee you they're gonna look, and they're gonna answer. And they may even be tempted to flip on over to Facebook, so make them turn their phones off or give them to you. We need to sing. Did you know that singing is the only act of worship that's gonna be in heaven? Have you ever thought about that? We don't get preached to. You don't have to give any money. No need to pray. Jesus is God, be right there. You can talk to him. Won't have to give. God don't need us to give anything in heaven. But we're gonna sing, and we're gonna sing for eternity. And what I like to tell people is, if you're not singing now, you're not gonna know the words when we get there. So you need to be singing. We want to do our best too. Colossians 3:16 says that we teach and admonish one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. If you're not singing, you're not teaching or admonishing me. And I need you to. I need you to. Poor singing influences the atmosphere of worship. Do you believe that? My daddy used to tell places he'd go to home meetings, he'd say, you get the best song leader you can afford if you have to bring him from another county, because it will make or break your meeting. And it can. You have poor singing, poor song leading, people, their mind wanders. The preacher's been up there, poured his heart out to try to get someone to come forward, and the song leader gets up there and doesn't know the tune to the song lead. What does that do? You immediately go from thinking about what was said to, I don't know this song, or he don't know this song. And it can be distracting. So we need to do our best in all areas, including singing. We also build up the church through prayer. You know, James tells us that the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous man avails much. We should all be righteous. If we're Christians, we should be right living. Our prayers are powerful. You know, have you ever heard anybody say, well, I don't know what to do, but I'll pray for you? That's the least I can do is pray. No. That's the most you can do. That is where the biggest help comes from. Your prayers go before the most powerful God ever. He can do whatever. And through his providence, he can help us in all areas. Your prayers are powerful prayers. That should be your number. You say, I will pray for you, and then what else can I do? That's the way we should look at it. Hebrews 4:16 says we come boldly before the throne. 1 John 5:14 says God hears us. Think about how important that is. God is listening. Every time you approach his throne, he's listening to you, because 1 Peter 5:7 says he cares. He cares what you're going through. He cares about the struggles you're having and the temptations you're trying to get through. You need to be praying for your preachers, his wife. Pray for the elders and their families, the deacons. Pray for that Sunday school teacher who has been in that class for 3 decades, and yet she still smiles when you bring your little Brady kids to her every Sunday morning, and she acts like she's thrilled to death to have them. Pray for her. How hard is it? Or do y'all have trouble getting teachers? You know, we need a teacher for the nursery class. Not me. We need a teacher for, it's hard. Partly because of what we talked about earlier. Kids are not disciplined, are they? If they let us smack them, they behave. Well, they won't let us do that. I did take one child in his chair, but, that was in public school. I put a piece of masking tape, one piece around him. I said, if you break that piece of tape, we are going to the principal's office. Up to that point, he had absolutely no self-control. That one little piece of tape, he didn't get up. He could have easily just, I don't think, I can't do it now, I'd be put in jail, but, it worked. Pray for the widows. We have a lot of widows. We had a widow in our congregation that died this week while we were gone. Her funeral thankfully won't be till Monday, but she was such an encouragement to us. We're going to really, really miss her. Pray for your young marrieds. Pray for new parents. They definitely need that. College students, they're going into a totally different environment. They're gonna have teachers who are gonna try to get them to not believe in God. They're gonna tell them that's foolish if you believe in creation. Pray for your college students. Pray for evangelistic efforts. Pray for courage that you'll open your mouth and teach someone else. In addition to praying for the, quote, sick of the congregation. That always tickled me. Those who are sick of this congregation. You'll get it. You'll get it on the way home. But you know, before you can pray and expect God to hear you and build up the church, you gotta be in that church. And I don't know, everyone over here may already be a Christian, but very quickly, we're just gonna look at God's plan of salvation. You have to hear the word. Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God. You have to believe that Jesus is who he said he was. He said, except you believe that I am he, you're gonna die in your sins. And then Jesus said, in Luke 13:3 and also verse 5, except you repent, you shall all likewise perish. Jesus said in Matthew 10:32 and 33, you gotta be willing to confess my name before somebody. You gotta be willing to say, I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Or, he said in the judgment, I'm gonna confess you before the Father. And then you must be willing to be baptized the way the Bible teaches, that is complete immersion in water. Mark 16:15 and 16. And when we do these things, we know, according to Acts 2:27, 2:47, God adds you to the one and only church. There's only one in the Bible. Jesus died for one. And you got to be part of his body if you want to be saved, and you must continue to remain faithful. So, as wise Christian women seeking to please God, we realize women are the backbone of the congregation. How would this day have gone if no women had a part in it? They'd have probably ended up at McDonald's, right? Women are the backbone. We do a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. We help the men. We don't get up and preach and teach and lead the singing. We're not supposed to. We don't need to. We've got plenty other to do. We are the backbone. So, if you're thinking, well, I don't do anything. I don't know what needs to be done. Go to your elders. Tell them that you want a job. Now, they're probably going to faint. But once they get up, they'll have something for you. They'll say, well, we really needed somebody to do this, or this. So you are needed. So wise Christian women are going to seek to please God. Let's rise up, build the Lord's kingdom with what you have, where you are. And God said, I will bless you now, and I will bless you eternally. I have really enjoyed being here today, and I hope that y'all have too. Thank you.
You beat the buzzer.
Well, I told my husband, I said, "You go back to
Yeah,
work."
he had one.
Not too bad. She got a little ponytail.
I noticed that her hair is really growing.
You know what? Part of it is we put that Rocosta
What's her
spray
name?
every time. I put it on mine too.
Her name.
Laura?
Laura,
These are
did
little
you
good
know
loppy
about
pajamas
10
that
or
are
12 years
larger,
ago,
they got
the
them on
Baptist
the
church
people had
put
the
out
light
a
around the
thing,
turn.
passed it to all their churches about indecent and weddings. Do not perform a wedding if the bride isn't dressed. Well, the only part I read was about the bride, but I just
You know, I
thought,
saw some